Good Monday morning at 6 o'clock. Welcome to Montana This Morning. I'm Victoria Hill. Thank you so much for getting your day and the week started with us. And good morning to our friend Miller over in the Weather Center.
Good morning, Victoria. Did you have a great weekend?
Yeah, a great weekend. It looked like a lot of people had a great weekend.
You mentioned that when you came in this morning. Was there a lot of folks out?
Yeah, out and about. I mean, you know, I'm sure spending that stimulus check, enjoying the nicer weather. And so, yeah, people kept themselves busy this weekend all around Billings.
Well, you know, Friday, it turned out to be a beautiful day. Hey, I want to say kudos to my youngest daughter, Taylor, now knows how to ride a bike.
Woo.
I was so excited about that. Actually teared up a little bit when she was doing it. So she's practiced so hard. Saturday, not so much. We did have the rain and the snow come through and it was cold. And then yesterday turned out to be a very nice day. And we have a bit of that seesaw that we're looking at as we look forward into this week. Right now we're sitting at 36 at the airport here in Billings where we've got the cloud cover. Feels like 29, humidity's at 48%, dew point's at 18. It's somewhat dry out there, but that's going to change as we go along this evening and tomorrow. We're going to tap into that moisture, rain and snow heading our way. Winds out of the southwest at about 9 miles an hour. Let's go inside the numbers. Yesterday on target where our high should be for this time of the season. It was a bit breezy yesterday. We saw some gusts over about 20 miles an hour. Could see some gusts over 30 miles an hour in the along the foothills of the Beartooth today. And in Wednesday, I think with that cold front coming through, just looking at different models, we could see some windy conditions back in style here in Billings. You'll notice the monthly total for the rain, those numbers are starting to go up. We had a record amount of precipitation on Saturday, and we've got more rain in the forecast here for Billings, but in the higher elevations we're going to see the snow. Temperatures out there right now mainly in the 30s. We'll warm up in the 40s and 50s today with a lot of cloud cover on the way. High today 52 here in Billings. How are we going to get there? Well, we start off in the 30s. By lunchtime we'll be in the 40s and then into the 50s later on this afternoon on this National Goof Off Day.
And here's a sad story.
Oh no.
If you don't know how to goof off, unfortunately, it's something you can't Google, because when I Google goof off, apparently it's a household product to remove like marker and grease and stuff like that. So
maybe it's a marketing campaign.
Maybe
they got us.
That's what it's really for, is that product and not being silly.
Well, if you have a chance to be silly today, why not? You only live once.
Just go for it. Yes. All right, Miller, thank you so much. I'll get on to the news. We begin in Livingston this morning, where 2 people are dead in what police are saying was a murder-suicide. Police arrived to a home on South 9th Street yesterday, following up on reports of several gunshots. Officers made contact with one of the people inside the home just moments before the person shot themselves. No names have been released as law enforcement investigates. A Montana court case that could shape future jurisdiction laws on Montana's reservations will be heard before the U.S. Supreme Court tomorrow. In 2016, Wyoming resident Joshua Cooley was arrested by a Crow tribal officer and eventually indicted on meth distribution charges. Cooley argues the officer is not allowed to detain him because he's not Native American and doesn't have tribal status. Recently, the Ninth Circuit Court of Appeals agreed, ruling the officer exceeded his authority. Experts argue if the Supreme Court upholds that ruling, safety will be a concern on the state's reservations.
Essentially, what it would mean is that in an instance like Mr. Cooley's case, where there's somebody on the side of a road, or, you know, when tribal police officers are just generally patrolling, if they come upon someone who they might suspect is doing something illegal, then they're basically presented with the option of asking whether the person is an Indian or a non-Indian. And if that person says, I am non-Indian, then that's basically the end of their ability to do anything, unless that person is clearly engaged in criminal activity at the time.
And now we go to Whitefish, where protesters are claiming Whitefish Mountain Resort discriminates against minorities. Lyft operator Mariah Ryan is one of the organizers of the protest, and she says it all started because of an incident directed at her.
A month ago at the beer stoop, I was outside with my roommate and a supervisor on the deck, where we circled around the discussion of equal representation, specifically on the mountain, and the lack of it. This was followed up by the supervisor letting us know we did not have an equality problem because we already have a N-word working on the mountain. Obviously, he didn't say the N-word. He actually said the word with the hard R. Referencing me to my face.
Another person says they quit because of this incident and because the supervisor in question was not fired. Resort officials say they plan to continue fostering a safe, diverse, and inclusive workplace. Now we turn to the latest on the pandemic. Starting next month, all Montanans 16 and older will be eligible for a COVID-19 vaccine. MTN's Gabby Crevitt caught up with the Montana Department of Health and Human Services to learn more about the distribution process.
Every week, the Centers for Disease Control and Prevention distributes the COVID-19 vaccines for state allocation to Montana. From there, the DPHHS determines how much vaccine will go where, using a specific formula.
We start out the week by looking at the numbers of vaccines that we're getting in, and then we use a pretty good method by which we take the total number of vaccines that we're getting, and we use a table to make sure that we divide that by percentage of population in each of our jurisdictions.
Then it's about deciding which type of vaccine goes where.
It's somewhat complicated because Pfizer, is 1,170 doses, has to have the ultra cold storage. Moderna, a little bit easier. That's 100 per case. And then Johnson & Johnson is 100 per case. So there was some limitations on where we could send Pfizer and where we couldn't.
The DPHHS says packaging of the vaccines and storage makes things tricky.
This isn't a perfect process because the vaccines come in 100 dose minimums or even close to 1,200 dose minimums. So we work to make sure that over, a couple weeks time or 3 or 4 weeks time that all evens out.
The COVID-19 task force says at this time, Montana is getting over 20,000 doses weekly for state allocation. Federal agencies like the Indian Health Service, Defense Department, and Veterans Health Administration are also distributing vaccines to eligible residents in Montana. But that vaccine allocation is determined on a federal level. Same goes for the federal pharmacy program, where Montana residents can look up available appointments at participating pharmacies.
The good news for us is people want vaccines, and we understand that, and we want Montanans to get vaccinated.
Reporting in Bozeman, Gabby Crevitt, MTN News.
And there were no new COVID-19 related deaths reported in Montana yesterday. Last week, the state's death toll increased by 21. Meanwhile, Miami Beach remains under a state of emergency due to COVID-19 concerns after large crowds gathered for spring break over the weekend. Travel has hit record levels recently, even though cases in many states continue to rise. CBS's Elise Preston has more.
Officials in Miami Beach have announced they're extending an 8 p.m. curfew in highly trafficked areas through April 12th. That after thousands of spring breakers, many maskless, flooded the streets, defying a Saturday night emergency curfew. The SWAT team needed to help break up the crowd, which some fear could spark a new coronavirus surge. The city's mayor announced the extended measure during an emergency virtual session yesterday.
There's 1,000 infections a day on most days, and 50 to 100 people are still checking into the hospital every day in Dade County. And our city isn't escaping that, even with so much of the vaccine being delivered.
Florida is leading the country in cases of the highly contagious variants first discovered in the UK and Brazil. Still, some vacationers insist the strict measures Miami Beach is implementing are excessive.
I'm from Detroit. They come to our city and act up, but our mayor don't make it a curfew because of that.
As more than a dozen states are seeing rising COVID cases, Americans are increasingly on the move. More than 1.4 million flyers went through U.S. airports on Friday, setting a pandemic record. Still, health experts remain cautiously optimistic, thanks primarily to more than 81 million American adults having received at least one vaccine dose.
There's enough of a backstop here that I don't think you're going to see a fourth surge.
More than 13% of the U.S. population is fully vaccinated. Elise Preston, CBS News.
There are new results this morning from a human trial of the AstraZeneca vaccine here in the U.S. It showed the vaccine was 79% effective in preventing symptomatic illness and 100% effective against severe illness. AstraZeneca says the independent review found no safety concerns with the shot, including no cases of blood clots. Other countries paused using the vaccine due to reports of blood clots. Europe's drug regulator concluded it is safe and effective. Also making headlines this morning, former President Donald Trump plans to return to social media with his own platform. A spokesperson expects it to launch within 2 or 3 months. No details were announced about what that platform might look like. Trump has held several high-powered meetings at his Mar-a-Lago resort in Florida to talk about it. The president was banned from Twitter for violating the company's glorification of violence policy. He was also banned from Facebook and Snapchat. Another high-profile New York politician is facing sexual misconduct allegations. Republican Representative Tom Reed says he takes full responsibility for the claims. A former lobbyist accused Reed of unhooking her bra through her blouse and placing his hand on her thigh. Reed says he has no plans to run for re-election, adding, "My behavior caused her pain. I was wrong. I'm sorry, and I take full responsibility." U.S. Senator Tammy Duckworth is calling for a deeper investigation into the motive behind last week's deadly shootings at 3 Atlanta area spas. The Illinois Democrat says the rampage, which left 8 people dead, including 6 Asian women, looks racially motivated. Authorities say they have yet to determine if it is. After the shooting, the suspect told police sex addiction led him to commit the crime. The Biden administration is closing the border between the U.S. and Mexico. This decision comes as a major surge of migrants are straining resources. Border agents detained nearly 9,300 unaccompanied children last month, almost doubling January's total. Thousands are being held in facilities for more than the 72 hours that's allowed by law. The Department of Homeland Security expects the number of migrants at the border will soon hit a peak not seen in at least 2 decades. Former President Donald Trump called on the Biden administration to restart construction on a wall at Mexico's border.